Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 16th episode of By the Drip. This podcast is about coffee, entrepreneurship, and the people we meet through the amazing story of coffee. I'm your host, David Crosby, founder and CEO of ROSSO COFFEE ROASTERS. In this week's episode, I sit down with Ply, the 2019 Canadian Brewers Cup Champion, and he placed 5th in the world. We chat about his unique story of becoming a business owner and his passion for olive oil. He gives amazing insights on roasting, blending, and brewing tasty coffee. It was a fun conversation with Ply, and I hope you enjoy it too. Ply, thanks for taking the time to join me.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
So you are one of the owners of Rogue Wave Coffee, and you recently placed 5th in the world at Brewers Cup. I just want to go back to the beginning. How did you get into specialty coffee?
So initially, when I get into specialty coffee, I was looking for a more like stumble upon coffee. I actually went to have a sandwich at a local place here called Faro. And that was my first ever, I would say, specialty coffee. I was kind of into coffee back then. This was about maybe 5 years ago. And back then I was doing, the dark roast, the French press and all that stuff. I heard about pour over. And obviously those are the dark roast French press that I was doing. I get coffee from wherever. It wasn't really specialty coffee. And I went to get sandwich and they were doing pour over. It's like, oh, I got to try this. They were like, which coffee you want? I'm like, I don't know. Ethiopia. They said, sure. All right, let's do it. And that was my first cup of coffee. I would say first cup of real specialty coffee. So that's kind of get me started on the specialty coffee train. But what's really, really changed me is that a few months after, I went to a local roaster here called Transcend. And you know Josh, people who are from Transcend as well. They do a good job here.
Yeah.
Back then, they were brewing on a clover.
Okay, yeah.
Well, yeah. And on the specialty menu, they had a geisha. And to be honest, I don't really remember what origin the coffee is from. So I order a geisha to be brewed on a clover. And back then, I was still drinking coffee, sometime with milk, sometime with sugar. And this one, when I got the coffee, I made sure that I would not add anything. I want to taste the coffee. And I had it. And it was so explosive of floral, of mandarin, of jasmine. And those are two of my favorite notes in coffee currently still. And that's really make a big impact on me and make me really looking for other specialty coffee. To give you a background, I was already into tasting of certain products. And back then I was doing a lot of olive oil. And intro, I guess, I was teaching people how to taste olive oil. And we were slurping olive oil as well. So I was looking into a similar thing with coffee in a sense that you are tasting the ingredient. Yeah. So when I taste coffee that time, I was like, oh, this is almost the same. Obviously different.
And so you taste this geisha, and then was there, a couple months later, like how did you end up at Rogue Wave? How did you convince the two Daves to bring you on as a partner? How does that story unfold?
After that cup of coffee, I looked for other specialty coffee places around town. Back then, I wasn't really looking to buy online because I was very nervous. I want to talk to people and I want to talk to the barista, maybe the roaster. So looking for all the roasteries around Edmonton, and Rogue Wave was one of them that I went to visit. And I was driving around on the weekend, going to different cafes, getting different drinks, try to talk to people. And I went to Rogue Wave as just a stop, one of my coffee adventure stop. And it was super small. It's really tiny. Seats about 6 people, have 2 tiny bar, and the 2 Daves were behind bar. We have David Laville and David Walsh. These are the original 2 owners of Rogue Wave. And I had a pour over there and I get to talk to them, and they were really passionate about coffee. brewing as well. She started discussing about brewing method. Back then, I was already kind of into starting doing pour overs and start doing different hand brew method as well at home. So we're talking about science of pour overs. And that's when I realized that when I come to Rogue Wave, I can actually talk to the barista behind bar and even talk about the coffee process as well. Whereas in other places, when I go, sometime when I try to talk to the barista about the coffee, they don't really know as much. And they were not quite as excited about coffee as I am. When I go to Rogue Wave, I really enjoy myself talking. Back then was a hobby, which is the coffee.
How did you convince the two Daves behind bar there that you wanted to be a business owner?
Right. So I became a regular first.
Okay, yeah.
So I would go to Rogue Wave on Saturdays, I should say, before my shift at the olive oil place. I would spend quite a bit of time talking to them, drinking coffee. And one day, David Laville asked what I do. And so I said, I'm a biochemist. And also, but I work part-time as an olive oil consultant. So then in his head, he was already thinking like, this guy is so passionate about coffee. I want him on the team. That's what he told me after. So we get talking more and more. And back then, they had to move. Rogue Wave was getting kicked out from their original space. The lease was coming to an end. They're looking for a bigger roasting space. And so David Laville actually invited me. So I actually wasn't really thinking about being in coffee industry at all. Coffee was just something that I really enjoy. It was supposed to be a hobby or something that I, really indulge and wasn't really thinking about being in a coffee business. So I didn't give him an answer for almost a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because I still was I was still learning about coffee, getting to know more about coffee in terms of brewing, in terms of processing. I didn't know how to roast, so I didn't know what I would be really doing at Rogue Wave. And then after about a year, they moved to a new location. I kind of helped them move a little bit, and so I decided, okay, let's try to do this. So I still remember just the three of us, the two Daves and I, at the new location, the current location. It was pretty empty, and David Walsh wasn't the one that really invited me. Yeah. Back then, so it was mainly David Laville, and he was the one who talked to David Walsh about me joining. So it was just like, hey, Dave, guess I'll be joining the team. I hope that it's okay, and and we'll see how it goes. And then he's like, yeah, we'll see how it goes. And that was 3 years and a bit ago.
Wow. So what is your role at Rogue Wave versus the other two Daves?
So nowadays, I do a lot of green buying. I do a lot of product development or buying products, and also account manager for our wholesalers, wholesale clients, I should say, in both coffee and equipments as well. And I also help with staff training. I hop on bar every now and then, and I do a lot of shipping currently as well.
So Ply, you sound like you've had like a few past lives here. You're a PhD. You have a PhD, or
not yet?
So you're in the midst of getting your PhD in biochemistry?
Yeah, that's right.
And then you used to do olive oil tastings. Tell us, maybe start with olive oil and then maybe lead us into your PhD and what you're studying.
Sure, sounds good. So with olive oil, I work in olive oil for about a year and a half, and very similar to coffee. In the olive oil world, we also have the varieties of olives, where it's grown, how it's pressed, the difference between the taste of different varieties of regions, how ripe the olive is when it's pressed, and that can impact the taste and the texture of the olive oil as well. So it's very similar. In olive oil, there's a slurping method called struppagio. It's sucking air over your tongue. Essentially, it's cupping with olive oil.
Okay.
And so I would be slurping olive oil all day. And that was an experience initially as well. So I get to learn more about how terroir kind of impact the taste, the varieties. And when I get into coffee, it's like, wow, it's the same. It's the variety of the coffee, where it's grown, how it's processed is the same as how olive oil variety can impact the taste and where it's grown as well.
So when you're tasting olive oil, what should we be looking for? If I know nothing about olive oil and I drizzle it on a salad, what flavors am I looking for? Like, what's the mouthfeel?
Very good question. So for olive oil, it really depends as well on how you would want to pair with your food. With the salad, you want something that on the lighter side. You don't want olive oil that is too heavy. So you want to be on the lighter body, and you want to have something like fresh cut grass. You might want an olive oil that's on the fruitier side, have like almond, artichoke, maybe hay in there as well. And obviously, these are like defects in coffee. Aftertaste, you want something a bit more peppery, but not too strong. You don't want it to be too spicy for the olive oil that in your salad. Mainly with olive oil, if you're not doing any pairing and you're just tasting the olive oil by itself, you would probably want to look at first. It would be the aroma. Yeah, you want something on the fresher side. You really don't want something that are really flat on the aroma, because that can tell you that maybe this olive oil could be rancid.
Oh, interesting. So there's a shelf life to olive oil?
Yes, it's about a year to 2 years after it's being pressed, depend on the bottle.
If you had a recommendation, where should they get olive oil? What's a quick win for someone to improve their olive oil game?
Oh, this is so tough because in Canada, it's so hard to just go in anywhere and get a good olive oil. You can Google New York Olive Oil Competition.
Okay.
Which is the world's largest olive oil competition. And then there, they'll have almost a listing of best, or which they say best, but essentially it's recommended olive oil from an actual olive oil council.
Oh, interesting.
And then they will have a listing on where you can buy it at places around you around the world as well. So every season, new harvest season, I'll take a look at what's available around me. That would be a really good starting point. They will also have tasting notes as well on that olive oil that you might be interested in, and that would be a very good starting point. They also have a recommendation on what you should use that olive oil for, and then after that you can branch out. Just to give everyone kind of recommendation, or rather my personal favorite, I should say, is, so I don't have like a favorite farms, which is very different from coffee, but I do have a region and varieties. So varieties is Abaquina from southern Spain. This is one of them. The other one is variety Koroneki from Greece. And the other one is Itrana from just a tiny small area outside of Lazio in Italy.
And they would all be kind of like higher acidity, sweet, silky mouthfeel, or they're all completely different?
They're quite different. So the Abaquina is really on the grassy type, kind of like fresh cut grass after a rainy day, and have kind of almond artichoke on the finish. Very peppery as well. Most peppery of all the three that I list. The pepperiness is actually a good thing because it's actually the antioxidant that kind of hit the back of your throat. It's a good quality of olive oil. The acidity, this is a very interesting comment, because with olive oil, an extra virgin olive oil will have the lowest acidity. So you're looking at 0.2%, 0.1% acidity. Now, when you compare to the Koroneki of Greece, this one have a higher body. Yeah, you don't want it to be greasy, but it's buttery. It's very buttery on some of the Koroneki I tried. So it stick a little bit more to your tongue and to your mouth. And instead of grassy, it's more like hay, more of macadamia on the nuttiness. Yeah, so it's used for mainly a more robust dishes, like Greek salad, for example.
How many olive oils would you have at home?
Usually I have about 3 of the higher quality one, and I have one that is extra virgin as well, but not as like expensive, because I'll use those one for cooking.
So the cheaper stuff you cook with, the more expensive stuff you kind of finish plates with. And
correct, that's right. Because once you use it with heat, you're going to be losing some of that tastiness of the olive oil.
Okay, talk to me about your PhD. How does that help with coffee? Does that hinder with coffee? Do you know too much?
I wouldn't say I know too much, but it definitely helps for sure. In my PhD research, I did research on small molecule bioactives for patients that undergo organ transplant. So I would look to find bioactive molecules that have an impact on certain enzymes that's responsible for part of your immune system. Now, in order to do this, we work with a few labs around the world that send us samples. So I'm looking into biological samples, mainly from the ocean. So we have a team in Vancouver who go down to Papua New Guinea, as well as off the coast of Vancouver to look for marine specimens. So these would be either marine bacteria, starfish, nudibranch, corals, and these marine organisms really produce a lot of complex molecules. And it can be poisonous or it can be a metabolite that doesn't have any impact as a whole. But if you were to purify it, it may have a bigger impact on the enzymes that I'm looking for. So what I would do then is that once I have the specimen, I would extract out or partition out certain molecules or a group of molecules using different type of solvent. So I'm purifying things that I want out. And in coffee, your solvent is water.
Okay.
And your coffee ground is your solute. So then you would purify out the flavors that you want using whatever technique, which means hot water agitation in terms of coffee brewing. Obviously, in my PhD research, it's more of using different type of alcohol solvent, using different method of trying to dissolve certain solids, and then purify using other liquid chromatography to try to get the purified molecules that I want out. So it's obviously very different, but the purification, the getting the tasty molecules out of coffee is very similar for me. So I have a lot of understanding or background understanding of this solution chemistry, I guess.
You've kind of touched on it, but have you applied a lot of that chemistry background into brewing coffee and like in Brewers Cup?
Yeah, definitely. Especially making my own water or getting the water style of water that I want. And that would impact the solubility of the coffee. Same thing with agitation as well. And trying out different technique in terms of brewing style as well as paper. Because very similarly, in biochemistry, when you try to purify something, you also choose the paper that you want to, or that is suitable for your experiment. Obviously, I don't have a lot of different scientific instrument, I guess. I don't have access to those to use those for coffee. So it's a little different.
Okay, so let's transition into you winning Brewers Cup in Canada. And that would have been in 2019, correct?
That's right. That was in October 2019.
And so you had until 2021 in Italy. Tell us about the process. How does one go about winning Brewers Cup in Canada? How about the timeline? What was training like?
Going into Canada Brewers Cup, the training was almost non-existent.
You're not supposed to say that, Ply. Come on.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I trained pretty hard for 3 weeks. So there. The most challenging part was finding coffee.
Okay.
And I believe that for every competitors, this is going to be the hardest thing to decide on the coffee that you want to use. And Dave, you know how I was in Milan. Anyway, for Canada, and I give this comment and advice to a lot of people as well, is that you ask for help if you need, which I did. And I reached out to a few people to ask for if they have coffee that would be suitable or if they think that would be a really good one for Brewers Cup. Our good friend, Edmund Kang from Moving Coffee, I reached out because he competed in 2019 in competition as well, but I was in Edmonton and that's where I met him. This was my first Brewer Cups 3 months after I got into coffee. So I reached out to Edmund. I really need help. Do you have something that really special and you can send to us to try? So he sent us 500 grams of 2 Ethiopian geisha from Geisha Village. I tried a roast with multiple profile on the Ikawa, picked the one I want, asked him for 1 kilo. He sent 1 kilo of green to us.
Nice.
I trained some more. Now, this 1 kilo of coffee arrived the day I was leaving to Montreal.
Oh, wow.
But at least I know what profile I want to use. So I roast all morning and then I left for Montreal in the evening. And then most of my presentation was put together in Montreal. Obviously, I already wrote the presentation, but I didn't have the coffee to practice with. I was lucky enough to have another staff, Che, who have been in coffee scene for a long time, a lot longer than I have, and also have helped other competitor compete as well. And she came with me to Montreal. She was also competing in Brewers Cup, and she really helped me out in terms of helping putting the presentation together and help me practice. So having someone to kind of almost look after you and make sure you practice is also a very good things to have.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. So I got a lot of help to be able to compete as well as I did in Canada.
So you win, and then you have to wait, a year and a half, almost 2 years to compete at Worlds. What was the process going to Worlds like and competing? Been in the coffee industry at that point, 4 years? To go to Worlds is a pretty big deal. And
yeah, that's right. About 2000. I start Christmas 2018, so about 3 years and a bit.
Wow.
It was very hard because initially we were expecting to go to Melbourne. So I was already looking for coffee for Melbourne. I went down to ROSSO, met with Cole, and Cole was cupping lots of different really exceptional coffees. And I had the coffee picked out from a cupping that I did with Cole. Back then, Forward Coffee was just starting out, which is a green coffee company with Cole and Dave. So they really helped me out initially to find a really exceptional coffee and get to learn more about different processing of coffee as well. Obviously, that didn't pan out. I had the coffee pick, but it was not something that we can use after about a year. They were going to move to, because of the pandemic, Melbourne got canceled. They were going to move it somewhere else. So I was start looking for other coffee. Even Milan, when it's announced, we weren't sure if it was actually going to go ahead. So there's a lot of anxiety there if we should look for coffee or not, or really wait until they actually confirm, and then look for coffee. Yeah. So the preparation for Milan was, I would say, a little lackluster on that part because of the uncertainties. And when it was, hey, Milan is a go, it's scrambling time. Luckily enough, during the pandemic and in the midst of pandemic, we were able to grow our special lots and limit lot type of coffee to export, and for domestic consumer as well. So we do have very exceptional coffee around as well. And I did reach out for help too. For Cole, he sent me a few very exceptional coffee. There was also a couple of auction lot. We went in together trying to look for competition coffee as well. And then I had a bunch of coffee to roast and to try them. I ended up creating about 40 different roast profile for all different type of coffee that was potentially going to be using for Brewers Cup. So leading up to Milan, about a month, 2 months up, leading up to Milan, it's all about finding coffee. Initially, everyone who was going to be going to Brewers Cup, they start to think about coffee in terms of origin and one single type of coffee. I asked Nelson, who was my coach in Milan, and Cole to come up to Edmonton to help me with tasting, because by that point I was so tired of my coffee.
Yeah.
And I really need some help tasting. Everyone at Rockway was also helping me tasting as well, different tasting profile. But it was time for someone else outside to help with the input. So when both of them were up here, we were for 2 days. The first day we did about 60 different brews.
Wow.
And it was a lot of coffee. We were really tired the next day. Both of them was like, hey, we really like these two coffee. One of them was an anaerobic wash. The other one was a natural. And they said, if you really could combine the cleanliness and the vibrancy and floral of this wash coffee with the sweetness and how fruity it is of the other coffee, that'd be stellar. I'm like, okay, let's try. Right. So that's when the blending idea started. I believe it was about 2 weeks before we leave for Milan. Now, in preparing the blend of coffee, for those of you who don't know, I use a blend in Milan. By the way, there's a lot more complexity than just single variety, single origin, an actual single origin coffee when you actually brew it. in competition. You have to think a lot more about how both of them are extracting at the same time, the grind size, and mainly the ratio of the coffee that you're going to be using as well between 2 or 3 or 4 different types of coffee. And so that's when the next day it's about blend. So another 40 or so brew of different blend. I'm trying to find the right coffee, the right roast of coffee. Obviously, it did not pan out, and I switched my coffee 3 days before competition in Milan. So I made my decision in Milan to use Swiss coffee, and I bring a bunch of coffee with me to practice, and also for me to be able to choose the coffee final minutes before going up the stage too.
And how did you get to your theory on your brew, your ratio of like the wash to the natural? And you explained a little bit about that.
So the coffee that I used was a Panama Abu Geisha. It is a 144 hours anaerobic fermentations and then slow dry for 25 days. And the other one is from Finca Carmen or Carmen Estate Coffee. It's a traditional washed geisha, which is super floral and very clean, and part of the reason why I use this particular coffee as well. For the wash, I use 4 grams, and for the natural, I use 8.5 grams. I came to this ratio is that with this particular ratio, I have enough floral. The floral is not too overwhelmed, and it's balanced out by the sweetness of the natural geisha still. If I were to use 5 grams, I find that the natural sweetness is not enough in competition. It's still very, very good coffee. But it was with the 8.5 grams, it's just a little bit better. If I was to use 3 grams of the wash instead of 4, the floral is not enough. So then you reduce that complexity. The coffee is still balanced, but the complexity is being impacted. Obviously, in competition, the term complexity doesn't really give you any score, but balance gives you score. So if you can increase the complexity while maintaining the balance and able to explain that complexity, the score will also go up because now you have that notes that you can give to the judge, more notes and also more distinct notes as well. So if you can have I would say the distinct complexity, and then that would really help. And so by combining these ratio, I find that the complexity increased, the floral increased and become more distinct, which means that I can tell the judge easier on notes that they can look for. And the coffee was really good.
The coffee was incredible. I was lucky enough to taste it. So what was your brew recipe?
Yeah, for sure. So for the brew recipe, I use an origami with Kalita paper and 12.5 grams total coffee. Now you would want to grind the natural a little bit coarser compared to the wash. The natural is a bit easier to extract because you're going to be brewing and extracting the flavors at the same time. So you need to take this into account. 12.5 grams coffee, 200 grams water. First, you're going to be adding 45 grams of water during your pre-infusion for 45 seconds. And then you're going to add water up to 130. And during this time, you're going to be adding at a higher height to increase agitation. So you're going to be increasing the extraction during the middle part. At around 130, so you're going to let it drain. At around 130, add water up to 200. For this part, you can go slow. The coffee already had some time with the water, so it's going to be slightly easier to extract during this later part of the brew. So lower your kettle, go really close to the bed as much as you can, and add really gentle on your water. The total brew time should be around 2 minutes to 2:15, depending on the grind size and depending on how much you want to extract. And most of the time, it tastes pretty good.
Did you change it between round 1 and finals?
I did. And it was, the recipe was the same.
Right.
The coffee itself actually changed by 1 gram. Another roast of the natural. So I had another roast of natural that very, very sweet, but it doesn't have the traditional fruit notes that I had. And I thought that by adding it, the complexity would be more and the sweetness would be more and the coffee would be more enjoyable. So I used 7.5 grams of the main roast, 1 gram of this a little bit more developed roast, and then I still have the 4 grams of the washed. But when you actually look at the score, my first round was better.
Oh no. This podcast is sponsored by ROSSO Coffee Roasters. You can check out the home coffee plan subscription on the website roastocoffeeroasters.com. This week's subscription coffee hails from an amazing farm in the West Valley of Costa Rica called Smava. We've been working with Mr. Menya since 2016. Smava has won the Cup of Excellence and has produced tons of tasty coffees over the years. Sign up for the coffee subscription and enjoy sipping on this amazing coffee while listening to my chat with Ply. What was your expectations going into Milan? Were you happy getting to the finals? Did you want to win the whole thing?
I think winning the competition should be everyone goal in going to Milan. And obviously, that's the ultimate goal for everyone who's competing in Brewers Cup. But I am very happy to be in the final. I'm already very happy going to Milan and representing Canada. I just want to do well. Every place I place. Yeah, I just want to do the best I can with the time I have. And being in the top 6 is already an achievement that I'm very proud of myself. One of the best moments in my adult life is when that Canada is called as the last spot for the final. And I can still imagine myself and hearing it still. And it was just an incredible experience to be there and then to have Canada called out in the final. Yeah, it was just something else.
Yeah, the group of Canadians just went crazy. It was quite the sight to see. It was awesome.
So very lucky to have everyone that's out there from Canada to be cheering on as well. And so consider myself very lucky to be there and then to did what I did.
You know, we got competitions coming up in the future. Are you going to go back and compete again in Brewers Cup?
Maybe. I haven't 100% decided. It's right now 75% gonna compete again.
Okay, yeah.
I got requests from someone in your company.
For you not to compete? Nelson doesn't want you to compete?
No, for me to compete because he wants to win barista.
I see.
And if I win Brewers, we'll be hanging out in Melbourne together.
I see. That would be very cool.
That would be very cool. I also asked him if I should try in barista as well. So I'll be competing in barista.
Nice.
Obviously, I'm not as good in barista competition. And a lot of time I do it for the experience and also forcing myself to learn more about espresso. Most of the time, I'd rather learn about brewing than espresso. And so it just kind of helped me with my own education. Once I sign up, David Laville, he understands that when you are in barista competition mode, it's insanely stressful. So he's like, Ply, do you really want to do this? It's okay. We can lose the money, he said.
Forget the money.
Yeah.
If you could reflect back on your time in Italy and the lead up, is there one piece of advice you could give to maybe another coffee professional thinking of getting into, a competition and what you could impart on them?
Yeah, I think definitely start early. And this doesn't mean that you have to get your coffee in early. That would be very good, but it can be a very hard decision to make. And I understand that. But I mean by early is that at least have an idea of what you want to present yourself in terms of your story, in terms of the theme as well. And watch video of people who do really well on stage and see how they actually conduct themselves on stage. And that will really help you putting your open service together. For me, even though I start late on my coffee, my open service presentation was 90% done about 2 months before. Hard to believe because I was known as the last minute person. And essentially, a lot of the time you can almost switch certain things in and out, certain information in and out when you change your coffee. Obviously, there's also a certain story that just really doesn't work with the coffee that you choose. But you can always change certain details to make it fit. The other thing is also getting someone else that really not involved with. For example, you wouldn't want your business partners or your staff or your close friends to be looking out for you in terms of sitting in on your set all the time. You probably want a fresh set of taste bud sitting in on your practice as well, so that they can give you feedback that's not from someone who have tried your coffee before or someone that's not close to you, someone that can be more objective toward your presentation, and not just presentation to it, and someone that can tell you, hey, your coffee sucks, you need to brew better. And I reached out as well. I asked a few people to come and help me. And obviously, I was also lucky to be housing with the Rosso crew in Milan, and they also helped me taste the coffee as well. And the night before my competition, I also had Yasuo from Trunk Coffee in Japan, as well as Tetsukatsuya, the 2016 Brewers Champion, came by and taste two brew and watch two set and give more feedback as well. And those has been really helpful, someone that are fresh. And you don't need someone to sit in on 4 or 5 different sets. Just one set is enough. Because remember, when you're up there, you only had one chance. So yeah, get someone else to sit on your set.
No, it's great advice. I think not enough people bring in new sets of eyes, and it can just change one little, set of wording or movements can be a big deal. So I think that's great advice. Ply, we're going to switch gears from comp here. I got to ask you about a few coffee trends, and I need you to say something controversial here.
Sure, I'm ready.
Okay, great. Is there a trend in the industry right now in, I don't know, processing or cafe service that you wish that would just go away?
The wish to go away?
To go away.
Vanilla syrup. That can go away.
That's not controversial. Come on.
It's controversial if you're a business owner because that's your moneymaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
It can. Well, here in North America, it is, unfortunately.
If you're gonna be very meta, it's the espresso and orange juice.
Okay. Yeah. Where did that come from, and why is that such a thing all of a sudden?
I have no idea. It's pretty gross, actually. I think you can make it good, but just by adding espresso to orange juice by itself and not modifying, that's not great. And I think that can go away. It can be made much better.
How so?
By a few ingredients. Slightly carbonate your orange juice a little bit. Maybe add rosemary.
Oh.
Just add a bit more complexity. Otherwise, your orange juice is going to overpower that espresso and it become like this murky brown liquid water that you'll be drinking and be like, is this orange juice that went bad? I said that, but we have a coffee lemonade at the shop. Controversial. Oh, how about this? We need more infused coffee with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe explain to our listeners what infused coffee is and then why that's either a good or bad thing or neutral.
Mm-hmm. So there's a different definition for different people with the term infused coffee. Some people take the term infused coffee for flavoring, as in after you roast, you infuse it with flavors, and that can also be considered infused coffee too. That one need to go. There you go. That's a bit more controversy. In current industry terms of infused coffee, it means that you are adding something else during the fermentation process. That is not coffee. That's not microorganisms. So you maybe are adding essential oils. That could be one. You are adding different type of fruits in your fermentation tank to either enhance the flavors. Most of the time you would want it to enhance the flavors, and that would be considered infused coffee. If it doesn't enhance the flavor at all and just help in terms of microorganism growth, then that would be considered additive and not infused. Now, with the infused coffee, a lot of time you can use certain fruits or certain essential oils or other type of natural flavorings that would help during the fermentation process. And this could really bring up, I would say, the quality in terms of taste of the coffee. So let's say that you have coffee that are not quite specialty grades, and when you roast it by itself, it's not great. And if adding certain fruits or certain things in the fermentation tank make it infused coffee, and that increase the quality of the coffee itself and make people enjoy that particular coffee more, it could really help out the farmers. Because the differences between specialty coffee, like 80 points, 81 points to 79, 78 points, is very, very drastic.
Yeah, to give context, like a farmer might get paid on a 78 point coffee, that's commercial grade coffee. They're getting paid very little for that. So if they can bump it up to 83 points, they could be in the specialty realm and fetch a much higher price.
Yeah, and that could really increase the quality of life for the farmers, for the producers. I think that could be a good thing in terms of raising an overall quality of coffee. You may say that infused coffee doesn't mean increasing the quality of coffee, but it does in a sense that it increases the quality of the flavor of the coffee. So after you roast, you enjoy that coffee more. If you may enjoy that coffee more, then then the farmers can sell that coffee more, and in the different market compared to a commodity market as well, and that can increase the price, even if it's just $1 per pound. That's a lot.
Do you guys buy any infused coffee right now? And how's the feedback been from clients in store?
We had in the past, not currently on shelf as far as we know. We have bought from Forward, and that would be the Mandarin infused coffee. So Mandarin peel was used in the fermentation tank during the processing. And they also use, I think we bought one lot that was just Mandarin. The other one is Mandarin and rum barrel. So I would consider any rum barrel as a infused coffee as well, because essentially you're using an external material to enhance that particular flavors into your coffee. And they've been stellar. People loved it. Yeah. The coffee is still there. You can still taste the coffee, but it's just that have this extra hint of Mandarin, extra hint of this like rum fermentation-ish in that particular brew. And I still get emails after about a year. Hey, you're going to bring these back? I'm like, whoa, maybe. I'll try. Yeah. People still remember after a year that these coffee made the impact for them.
Do you think it's just easier to identify? Is that the reasoning? It's like way more enhanced. That flavor, that Mandarin flavor is just amped up.
Yeah, I believe so. I think the coffee itself also have a little bit of that citrus, but by adding something that are complementary, it's amped up the flavor notes, and people really take into that distinction. When they had it, it's like, oh yeah, this is a Mandarin peel fermented coffee. They brew it, it smells like Mandarin. They taste it, like, oh yeah, it's there. This is what I want because I bought it because it said Mandarin on the bag.
What about in competition?
No.
No. How do we know that people aren't using these infused coffees?
I'm sure they have done it 100%. I'm sure someone used it before. I'm sure that it went as a normal coffee as well, as in the person or the people who've been using it just saying that it's a normal coffee. And this is tough because a lot of time, 99% of competitors didn't go to the farm to do their own processing or to talk to the farmers and pick their own lots. I didn't do that. The only very few people who compete did those things. So what you end up is you have to take the words of the producer and you have to go with their words. They said, hey, this is 144 hours fermentation. It's like, okay, this is 144-hour fermentation. Hey, this is a double anaerobic fermentation thermal shock or whatever. Then you're like, okay, this is that coffee. This is how it was processed. So it's so hard to know exactly how it was produced if the producer is not, being honest with you. And so on paper, this coffee is not infused, but it may be. You don't know. I guess you could send your coffee into a lab and see if it's infused or not. And that sometimes doesn't tell you the whole if it's actually infused or not either. The coffee is so complex, it's produced so many molecules. And then if the producer's using different method of infusion, it could be hard to be like 100%, hey, your coffee that you said is not infused is actually infused.
Okay, Ply, I want to be respectful of your time here. I got a few personal questions we'll end the podcast with. First one is, what does rest look like for you?
Rest?
I don't know if that's in your vocabulary.
Like what time I go to bed, I assume?
No. Now, how do you reset? How do you recharge that you're excited to go into the shop or compete?
I do a few things to, I guess, reset myself and rest. I watch a lot of anime, I read manga. So that's very different from coffee. Get my mind out of coffee, and that really helped. Currently, it's so hard because the business is growing and spend a lot of time at the business. So getting that reset is hard. The other one is that I don't drink coffee on Sunday.
Oh, nice.
So if you don't see me on Live with Ply on Sunday, most of the time, 90% of the time, I didn't drink coffee on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And so that's also helped me in terms of reset both my palate, and also I don't have to think about coffee. I don't have to think about what grind size, what coffee you're going to drink. So it's just a day without coffee.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. And I just drink water throughout the day and just be like, okay, Monday, ready to drink more coffee, ready to cup more coffee. So that's also helped. I have a no coffee day.
What's next for you and Rogue Wave?
We are expanding.
Tell us about it.
So not in terms of multiple locations, because that's too much work. During the pandemic, our neighbor, a very, very good neighbor, there were a gym, and the pandemic that did not treat gyms very well. So they went out of business, and very unfortunate. But we end up buying one of the bay right next door to us. And so we're going to be growing in terms of size.
Nice.
This allow us to bring more coffee in, allow me to bring in more products to sell, more coffee gears, more filter papers.
Sweet.
And more seatings for our customers as well. Yeah, so that's a very exciting project. We are designing how we can combine this space right now. Essentially, we're going to tear down a wall and try to combine the two space together. And that's going to be another busy few months to try to get this up and going and make sure that we can have more people in the shop and have more seatings area and more way to display our products, and maybe a brew bar, an extra brew bar, so that I can brew coffee and talk to people.
Sweet.
Yeah.
You guys just got a new roaster too, right?
That's right. Yeah. We got a new roaster in November. So right after I came back, a new roaster was already here, and like, oh, all right, time to put the roaster together and try to learn how to roast again. And we got a 15 kilo Loring.
Sweet.
So it's very different from our previous roaster, which is a more drum roaster instead of a drum and air roaster that is Loring.
Okay, buddy, where can people find you online and Rogue Wave?
We are at roguewavecoffee.ca. Yep. And you can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at Rogue Wave Coffee. You can find me personally on Instagram at Coffee with Ply. And I don't post a lot, mainly story, but you can always message me.
Reach out to Ply if you're doing Brewers Cup. Yes,
that's right. I'm more than happy to help. I'll be helping out a few people at the US Brewers Cup in Boston.
Oh, nice.
So I'm very happy to help. Although I'm not helping the current US champion. We shout a lot, and we just make fun of each other. It's fun.
No, you're buddies. Don't say that. Someone will take this the wrong way.
No, we actually became really good friends. And that's one thing about competing, is that when you're competing, you make a lot of friends. And that top 6, we are all good friends. And I make lots of very good friends out there at the competition as well.
Well, Ply, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll chat soon. We'll see you in Boston.
Thank you very much, David. Happy to be here, like I said, and we will see you at Boston.
Look at that. You made it. Thanks for listening to By the Drip. If you could please subscribe, rate, and give us a comment, that'd mean the world to me. Till next time.